Welcome to the Sheridan Report, brought to you by MyBookie.Ag. The Sheridan Report is also brought to you, of course, by the Grilling Crew Sports Network. I'm your co-host, Mike Goodpasser. Right now, I'd welcome in my other co-host, Bobby Sheridan. How you doing, Bobby?
Hey, Mike. Good morning. How are you? Man, I'm kind of bummed. I woke up to the American AAF League folding, and you tried to tell me, didn't you?
Yeah, that stuff never works. Maybe the XFL will do better with Vince McMahon. I want to tell everybody real quick, though, if you're listening to us, we are brought to you by MyBookie.Ag. You can go to thegruelingtruth.net, click on the MyBookie.Ag banner, top of the page, and get up to a $1,000 bonus. You get 50% on whatever you put in on your first deposit. So make sure you go through thegruelingtruth.net to do that. Or you can use the promo code TGT50 at the MyBookie.Ag website. Bobby, we got a little baseball to talk about?
I do, Mike. And, tonight's a non-basketball night. There just wasn't anything I saw worth betting on tonight. There is a little bit of intrigue, though, with the Warriors playing the Nuggets. That game, if the Nuggets could get that game in Golden State, they would, again, pull even for the number one spot. But I looked at the schedule going forward that even if the Nuggets won tonight's game, it would be highly unlikely that they would finish with the number one seed. Their last 5 games are all pretty difficult, while the Warriors have a much easier schedule. So it looks like that's for nothing anyways. And we didn't see anything in the college, the NIT semifinals we wanted to go with. So it's just baseball, and that's our bread and butter, and that's okay. We've got an NBA playoffs coming up here, but then there's going to be a long stretch where it's all about baseball, and it's a big part of what we do during the year. So I'm excited about tonight's card. We've got 3 games that we're looking at in terms of straight plays, and then our 3-team parlay. And just to kind of overview again for any new listeners, the way it works is on our straight plays, we're always on an underdog. On the money line, I always take the value, and I try to find the best 2 to 3 underdogs that I like to win on the card. And I'm looking to hit a good percentage of those. And when I say a good percentage, better than 50% of those, and you're getting value with your money because it's an underdog on the money line. So that's our philosophy there. And then we always have a 3-team parlay where I take the best valued 3 teams that are favorites. That is, I could not find the underdog in those games, and so we tie those up, and that kind of covers our action. And many times we hit the whole thing. So we're still looking for our first baseball sweep. We've been close. We felt like we've had it a couple times already. Games have gotten away, maybe in the 8th inning or something like that, and that's the nature of the beast in baseball, Mike. And you've got to hold on to those leads. It's kind of like the 8th and 9th inning, 7th, 8th, and 9th are a completely different ball game. It's no longer the starter out there that just is unhittable. It's that starter is now out of the game, even if he was unhittable, and you've got 2 guys or 3 guys or 4 guys trying to finish the last 2 or 3 innings. So there's a couple different games and a couple different ways you have to handicap. So I'm always looking at the bullpens and the state of those and the availability of the top relief pitchers in terms of how I'm putting my plays in. And so that's just kind of an overview for the fans of how I do things in baseball. And so tonight what we wound up with is we have a top play, which is the Rockies. That's over the Rays. They're about opened $1.40 or so, and I just saw that at $1.47. That's plus. Rockies are plus 147. That's over the Rays, and we're trying to beat Snell tonight. He had a really tough first outing, and I think Freeland's going to outpitch him tonight. So that's my thought process there. And the Giants are I'm looking to go back to back with them over the Dodgers tonight. It's a game I was really looking at before even yesterday's game, and the Giants upset them, and I found that I'm not going to get off the game just because the Giants happened to win game 1. They played a really solid game, and the Giants bullpen is actually better than the Dodgers, and I feel like Bumgarner will get it to that spot. So that's kind of the thought process there. The Giants are plus 165. I have it on my sheet, and I forgot to check that. Is similar line now, I believe. Let me look at it. The Giants, I've got it 148 plus. So that game has come down. That's not surprising. But that's still a nice number to take. And then finally, guys, I like the Athletics, the A's tonight. It's another game I was looking at before they happened to upset Price last night. I was looking to come back and beat Sale tonight. and I'm going to stay with it. Mike Fayer's their best pitcher. He pitches very well in Oakland, and he came back and had a great second outing this year, and I think he can outpitch Sale tonight. I definitely like Oakland power, the way they're swinging the bat, better than Boston. Boston's struggling. I've got Oakland, and it's plus 161 now. So that's my 3 straight plays. I think we'll hit the top play, and then we'll at least split the other 2. And then we've got the 3-team parlay. This is this is a good one. I really like this one. We've got the Mets, the Twins, and the Padres. These are 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock hour. $100 wins $487. So
all right,
I've got
Bobby.
3-team parlay. Mets, Twins, and Padres. So that's kind of a long-winded overview of the card tonight. That's how I saw it, and that's it.
All right. We're going to have it on this day, talking about the 1984 NCAA Basketball Championship in a minute. I want to remind you guys that we talked about MyBookie.Ag. You can find the Sheridan Report at SheridanReport.com on the internet. $10 a day or $50 for the month. You get all the Sheridan reports. You'll have this information the night before, which most don't put it out till an hour or 2 ahead of time. So that is the advantage to buying the Sheridan Report and also listening to the Sheridan Report show the next day. It gives you a little bit more inside information. So make sure you check him out there. Also, at Sheridan Report on Twitter. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll come back and discuss the 1984 NCAA Championship right after this.
Hi, I'm Mike Goodpasser from the Grueling Truth Sports Network, and I'm here with just one simple message. If you're watching the games, it's time to start making money. The Grueling Truth has recently partnered with MyBookie.Ag, an industry-leading sportsbook website, who reminds you that where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on, and that's why the Grueling Truth urges you to check out MyBookie.Ag. In addition to the usual thousands of odds, money lines, proposition bets, and futures offered on MyBookie.Ag daily, they also have in-game live betting and a mobile site that makes wagering on the go easier than ever. So join now, and MyBookie will give you up to a free $1,000 cash bonus on your first deposit. Just enter promo code TGT50. That's TGT50 to take advantage of this offer. You can also go to thegruelingtruth.net. Click the banner at the top of the page for MyBookie.Ag and also get the same benefit and the same $1,000 free cash bonus on your first deposit. So visit MyBookie.Ag, courtesy of the Grueling Truth, and enjoy winning today. MyBookie.Ag. You play, you win, you get paid.
All right, guys, we're back. Sheridan Report brought to you by MyBookie.Ag. Bobby, what do we got today?
Hey, 1984. On this day, Mike, the 46th NCAA Men's Basketball Championship was held, and Georgetown beat Houston 84-75. So I wanted to hear, what happened in that ballgame.
All right. I'm going to give you the entire tournament if you want, because this, to me, was one of the most interesting tournaments. It involved 53 schools. This was the last time it would be under 64. It was 53, and the interesting thing here was they had play-in games where they had the 11 seeds and the 12 seeds play each other in like 4 of the brackets, and then those teams would get to go and advance into the main draw, and then teams that were seeded in the top 4 would actually get a bye into the second round. In this tournament, you actually had the lower seeds caused a lot of issues, especially in the first round. Temple beat St. John's by 2 points, but you had a huge upset. Richmond beat Auburn. Auburn had Charles Barkley at the time. Richmond beat them 72-71. This is in the East region. Virginia Commonwealth, the 6th seed, beat the 11th seed Northeastern on a last-second buzzer beater shot. And Virginia, in the last seconds, beat Iona, who was the 10 seed. The upsets were kind of prevalent here in this side in the East Regional, because then in the second round, I don't know if you remember Terrence Stansberry, played for the Indiana Pacers. He led.
I do remember him.
Yeah, he led he led Temple against North Carolina. Carolina won the game, but it was tight most of the game. Carolina prevailed 77-66. Indiana played the Richmond team coached by Dick Tarrant, who had upset Auburn in the first round. And actually, 4 years later in 1988, the year after Indiana won the national championship, Tarrant beat the Hoosiers in the first round, but IU prevailed by like 8 to 10 points there. And then Syracuse was the 3 seed who beat VCU, who'd won the tight game before. Then you had a huge upset. Virginia, and remember, Ralph Sampson had graduated the year before. They had Rick Carlisle, Othell Wilson, Olden Polynice. They upset Alvin Robertson and Arkansas, who was the 2 seed, by 2 points. In the regional semifinals, we had 2 massive upsets. Virginia beats number 3 seed Syracuse, who I think their main player then was Dwayne Pearl Washington. They beat them, I think, by like close to 10 points. And then in the next one, we had Indiana with started like three freshmen, maybe even 4 freshmen, played with Bobby Knight, played North Carolina with Michael Jordan. And Indiana gets Jordan in foul trouble early. Jordan only plays 20 minutes, which is what held him to 14 points, not damn Jokic, the way he'll tell you. And Indiana upsets them 72-68. I think Steve Alford scored 32 points on the game. And that takes us to the Elite Eight, where I'm an Indiana fan. I'd think, man, we just beat North Carolina. We're definitely going to beat Virginia. Didn't happen. Virginia ends up beating Indiana 50-48. They go to the Final Four as a 7 seed. In the Midwest region, what we had, as always, was DePaul as the number 1 seed. And as always, DePaul got upset in their first game, or the second game. They beat Illinois State in the first round. Then they played Wake Forest, who was the 4 seed. And Wake Forest comes out, beats DePaul 73-71. The interesting thing about Wake Forest is they had Tyrone Muggsy Bogues was the starting point guard on that team, who played out of his mind during that entire tournament for them. On the bottom half of the bracket, you had Memphis State upset Purdue, that was the Memphis State team with Keith Lee, who actually went to the Final Four the next year, but they crushed Purdue by like 18 points. Houston beat Louisiana Tech, and they only beat them by 7. That was Phi Slama Jama with Hakeem Olajuwon and all those guys. Clyde Drexler was the only guy that was gone from that 83 Phi Slama Jama team. But the interesting thing about Louisiana Tech is Louisiana Tech's best player was Carl the Mailman Malone, who I think he went on to have a decent NBA career. And then we go to the regional semifinals. Houston beats Memphis by like 5 or 6 points. And then in the regional final, Wake Forest with Muggsy Bogues. They played Houston tough. The game wasn't decided until the final minute. Houston beat them, I think, like 67 or 68-63. We go to the Mid-East region, which this is, and I know we've talked about this with Steve before, this was the last time, I think, that a home team was allowed to play the regional in their own building, where I know that Kansas played it in 1986 in Kansas City, but at least it wasn't Fall Allen Fieldhouse. But Kentucky, actually, in 1983, Kentucky played Louisville, and Louisville had beaten them in overtime 80-68, the first time they'd played since 1959. The interesting thing here is Louisville plays Tulsa in the second round. If they win, they play Kentucky. They beat Tulsa, but they only beat them by 2 points, and Tulsa was led by Nolan Richardson, who would then go on to be the coach at Arkansas and win a national championship about a decade later. So Kentucky and Louisville played at Rupp Arena in a regional semifinals where Kentucky beat Louisville by 4 or 5 points. And then Kentucky played in the Elite 8 against Illinois. Illinois had beaten Maryland by 2 in the Sweet 16, and the Elite 8 game, Kentucky beat them 54-51. One of the worst officiated games in history. I mean, Illinois should have won the game. They got hosed big time. Illinois was the 2 seed. Kentucky was number 1. Kentucky advanced. Then we go to the West region. The number 1 overall seed that year was the Georgetown Hoyas, which I think was the greatest defensive team we've ever seen, was the 84-85 Hoyas. The Hoyas almost lost, though, in the second round. They played John Koncak, who would go on a few months later to play with Patrick Ewing on the 1984 Olympic team coached by Bob Knight. They beat SMU 37-36. The interesting thing about this is, you remember we talked about the 82 national champion Georgetown team the other day, and outside of the championship game where they gave up like 67 points to lose it, every game up through there, they never gave up over 49 points. And this tournament was the same because they beat SMU 37-36. They beat UNLV 62-48. They played Dayton in the Elite Eight. Dayton was a 10 seed. Most people thought they would lose in the first round. They played LSU, and they handled LSU by 8 or 10 points. The second round, though, they played Oklahoma and Wayman Tisdale, and Roosevelt Chapman went off for Dayton, scored over 40 points. And on the top part of that bracket, you would think then they're going to have to play Duke, but Duke is the number 3 seed. Got upset by Detlef Schrempf, Christian Velp, and those guys with the Washington Huskies by 2 points. Dayton then goes on to upset Washington out in L.A. I think they played this at UCLA's home arena. But they beat Washington by 5 or 6 points. They played Dayton in the Elite Eight. Dayton was just too strong for them. Beat them 61-49. I wanted to talk about it because I really like that Dayton team that was coached by Don Donaher. Now, when we look at the Final Four, the big matchup was Kentucky-Georgetown. And this was the third time in school history that Georgetown had been in the Final Four. And Kentucky had the twin towers of Sam Bowie and Melvin Turpin. And they got Patrick Ewing in foul trouble early in this game, and Kentucky actually had a 27-15 lead with 3 minutes left in the first half. After that, however, even without Ewing, the Hoyas made a defensive stand that I think is unequaled in anything I've ever seen in college basketball history. Kentucky only scored 2 more points in the first half, and they led the game, I think it was like 27-20 at halftime. And when you come out in the second half, the thing that is really impressive is Georgetown held Kentucky scoreless for the first 10 minutes of the second half. It completely turned the game around, ended up blowing them out 53-40. And it was just, as a Kentucky hater, I absolutely loved the game. It's the first time I ever cheered for Georgetown because I didn't like them either, but they were playing Kentucky, so I was cheering for Georgetown. But yeah, they held them to 11 points in the second half, held them to none the first 10 minutes, held them to 11 the second 10 minutes. And then the second national semifinal, nobody gave Virginia as a 7 seed a chance. Houston's playing its third consecutive Final Four. And they had all kind of trouble with them. Virginia slowed the game down. It ended up being a 49-47 overtime win, where I'm not 100% sure here, but I think there was a chance at the end of that game for Virginia to win it, and I think they missed a shot at the buzzer. It goes to overtime, and they lose there. And that led us to the NCAA final, which this is huge because you got Patrick Ewing against Hakeem Olajuwon. And the thing that's surprising here is Olajuwon got in foul trouble early in the game. And the guy who really took over here was sophomore guard Alvin Franklin, who I think scored like 21 points, played one of the best games I've ever seen him play. I think Michael Young put up 18 points. Olajuwon was held to 15 because he was limited to like 30 minutes, and he played probably 10 of those with 3 or 4 fouls on him, which made it difficult. And Georgetown led 40-30 at the half. And I remember Franklin gets hot early in the second half, gets it down to like a 2 or 3 point game. And then Georgetown just kind of methodically broke them down after that. And that Georgetown team, defensively, they had Michael Jackson, David Wingate, Patrick Ewing, Fred Brown, Ralph Dalton. And then they had Reggie Williams, who was only a freshman, who ended up being a good NBA player too. They had Bill Martin, who had even played on the 82 team, Horace Broadnax, and then the guy that really stood out to me was Michael Graham. And Michael Graham was the difference. Michael Graham looked like a convict, or at least an ex-convict. He had the bald head and the menacing glare.
Right.
But he came out, he played 24 minutes in that game, scored 16 points, had 5 rebounds, 4 personal fouls. So, I mean, right there, I think Michael Graham was the difference in this game. Because Patrick Ewing was held to 10 points. I mean, he was like 4 for 8 shooting. Olajuwon did a really good job on him. And I know Benny Anders, I remember Benny Anders played on that Houston team also.
Yeah.
But it was a really good game. And the thing I remember is they played this at the Kingdome in Seattle, so the crowd was like over 60,000. It's the first time they'd played a national semifinal or a Final Four since like 1952 in Seattle. But yeah, that's the story of the 1984 tournament. And of course, the next year, Patrick Ewing's senior year, where you thought they would have just ran through everybody. They did until they ran into Villanova. And Villanova shoots like 70% for the game and 90% in the second half to beat them by, I think it was 66-64. But that's the story to Georgetown. And the thing impressive about it is this. When I see Texas Tech and Virginia play basketball, defensively, they don't have the big man in the middle like Georgetown did, but that's what both of those teams remind me of, and that's why I think that's what we're going to get in the finals.
That would be a great final. That's the one I would love to see too. And And you mentioned Reggie Williams. It takes me back because I graduated high school in 1987, and that
Me
was
too.
the year. That was the year that he was drafted by the Clippers, and they took him high in the first round. He did have a good, solid NBA career, but I don't know that he ever fulfilled, being the first pick, first round, fourth pick type status. I don't know that he ever established himself in that way in the NBA. I'll have to look that up, but
Yeah, I
I
mean,
liked
Reggie
him a lot.
Williams, from what I remember, he was drafted by the Clippers, and then I think he only played like 3 years there, and then I think he
2
went to
years.
like Cleveland, and then Sacramento, and I know he was in Denver a while, and I'm a Pacer fan, and I remember for a short time he was an Indiana Pacer. I forget where he went after that, but for his career, if I had to guess, I'd say probably averaged around 10 points a game. So if he'd have been a second round pick or a lower first round pick, you'd probably consider him a success. But you got to consider him a bust when he's picked that high and that's all he does.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of remember that. And he was, as a kid, as a young guy, I did like him a lot on that team. Of course, Patrick Ewing got so much
Well,
of
the interesting thing is he was the star on the '87 team that got upset by Billy Donovan in Providence in the Elite Eight that was coached by Rick Pitino.
Oh, okay.
Because you
Yeah,
remember that's the year Providence snuck in and got to the Final Four. And Providence almost lost in like their first tournament game, and then they got hot. And I think they beat Alabama with Wimp Sanderson in the Sweet 16. Then they upset Georgetown, and then they played Syracuse, and Syracuse pretty much manhandled them in the Final Four.
Yeah, that was obviously a rematch. Was that probably the third time they played that year?
Yeah,
Right.
so
I mean,
they knew each other. Hell, it could have been the fourth time. I don't know if they played in the Big East tournament or not, but yeah.
Right. Very good, Mike.
What-
What a team. I mean, and taking it to now, like you said, those two teams remind you of that, kind of without the big guy.
Without the big guy, but I will say this, in Texas Tech and Virginia's defense, they're much better free throw shooting teams than what those Georgetown teams were.
Yeah. I think the shooting, definitely has improved a lot, and just in today's game in general. I mean, these guys. I watch a lot of stuff. Mainly the NBA stuff and the charting of shots. Not that I use it for my handicapping, but I'm really kind of interested in it. And it's all about those shots and threes. The dying shot.
I don't think the shooting is so much better today. I think long range shooting is better, but I think the intermediate, 10 to 20 feet, I don't think the ball's shot as well as it used to be.
I agree with you. Yeah. They work so much on the dribble drive to the basket and getting contact and still being able to get the ball in the bucket. I mean, those guards are so good at that now. And then the outside, even the 7-footers are great shooters now. So it's all about, the long shot and then the drive to the basket, and the 14-footer, the 17-footer is kind of forgotten. But
yeah, and we talk about
you're right.
Elijah One. Elijah One's one of the guys that could hit you from 15 or 20 feet.
Right.
He can shoot the ball. Yeah. Or he can drop step you. Still the most complete center I've ever seen, I think. Kareem had the greatest shot. The most unstoppable shot was Kareem's skyhook. But I'll tell you, I've watched Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, all these guys. I would take Hakeem Olajuwon over any of them because I don't think I've ever seen a 7-footer run the floor the way he did either.
Yeah, amazing.
I mean, I remember watching him. He'd get the ball like the free throw line on a steal, and he would lead the break.
Jeez.
But
yeah, he was something else, and he had so many moves down in there, and could get that shot off however he wanted to. And he was one of the first centers I remember watching that he'd just go right around you, like you said, and almost look like a forward.
Yeah, I mean, he did. He was like a small forward in a center's body. But, all right, guys, I want to remind you, you can follow Bobby Sheridan at Sheridan Report on Twitter. Go to SheridanReport.com, $10 a day for his Sheridan Report, or $50 a month. Parlay that with MyBookie.Ag, where you get up to a $1,000 cash bonus on the first 50% you deposit. So if you deposit $1,000, you'll have $1,500 to play with. You deposit $2,000, you'll have $3,000. Follow Bobby. Bobby will guide you to making a little bit more money than what you had yesterday. All right, guys. Bobby, any final comments?
That's all. I'm interested to see maybe what happens in that NIT final. That we're gonna know what that is after tonight's semifinal.
They still playing that? Okay.
It's not the AAF. The NIT has been around a while. So
no, it's not the AAF because it doesn't cost as much to put on the NIT as it does a professional football league, which now everybody knows. You need to see if Michael wants to come on our show to talk about it here in the next week.
I will.
Maybe we could have him on and he could give Oliver some tips.
Those two can meet up. You know what's funny, Mike? Just real quick.
Yeah.
It's funny. I know we're signing off. This probably isn't the right thing, but I went on to few of the guys that I follow on there in the AAF, and as of like 3 hours ago, they're still tweeting about the games and excited, and here it is. Like a lot of people just got crushed today. The people that have invested so much time and energy into this to not even get through the year, that's got to be a major disappointment.
Well,
just major.
I've been involved in indoor football, and I've been with one or two teams that have folded. Teams that have folded that were getting ready to go play in the playoffs, and it's not very fun. But
yeah, I can imagine. So,
and especially since the big question is, will they pay everybody?
I'm sure they will.
Really? Are you sure? Because I'm not that sure. I've been on the case where, sometimes they don't. And the thing is, it's an LLC, so they can get away with not paying them, too.
Well, hopefully this guy who invested all that money, Dundon, and he's cutting the cord.
Here's what I got. At the center of the AAF's uncertain future are negotiations between the league and the NFLPA over the use of NFL practice squad players. Last week, AAF control owner Tom Dundon said that if a deal could not be reached between the two sides, he would examine all options, including dissolving the league. While the AAF played games last week, Dundon doubled down on his statements Monday evening. CBS Sports can confirm that Dundon is acting against the wishes of the people contracted to work underneath of him. So, but you can do that when you put a couple $100 million of your own money into something.
Well, yeah, when you got the money, you're the man, right?
And remember this, when you take that money from that guy, that's all great. But if he doesn't know a damn thing about football, which he doesn't, it's probably not going to work out. And I think we had this conversation when he bought them and our AAF friend didn't come on, and this is basically what we said was going to happen.
Yeah, it was, Mike.
And unfortunately it happened because it sucks for the players, it sucks for the coaches, it sucks for both fans of the league. So it's just rough all the way around. I'm sorry, I had to make a joke there. It's just my nature.
No, I understand, and I know you've been there, Mike, and you know how it feels. So I know you do feel.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for them, and I also feel for them because they fell for it. And it's easy to fall for the stuff like this because you want it to work so bad that you'll just kind of put blinders on, close your eyes, and hope nothing bad happens. And in this case, usually something bad happens.
Kind of like that girl you're dating and it's not right for you, but you just put the blinders on.
Sure, Bobby. Whatever you used to do is fine with me. All right, guys, we're going to wrap the show up. Make sure you check out the Sheridan Report, MyBookie.Ag. Me and Jeremiah will be back with our daily boxing show tonight live at 11 o'clock Eastern. You can find us on Spreaker, Twitter, or just go to the GruelingTruth.net website to hear the show. Me and Risley will be back tomorrow at noon, and then, of course, me and Bobby at 2 o'clock, our normal time. So we will see you guys all tomorrow. And I want to thank everybody that has listened. I know we got numbers, and I think yesterday's show's at like 4,000. Saturday's show, we had over 8,000 listens. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions for Bobby, you can tweet him at Sheridan Report. Or if you want to just send a question to me and I'll get it to Bobby, you can tweet it at The Grueling Truth or at Grueling Truth. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Bobby Sheridan, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.